Hi, this is Martin from Coach Yourself TV in Germany. Our guest today is Connirae Andreas. Hi Connirae.
Hello Martin.
Connirae, what is the wholeness process?
Very simply, Martin, the wholeness process is a new model. It's a new way of working, and it's a way of working that does very deep personal transformation and healing. And at the same time, it does this in a way that we could call it also a path to enlightenment or awakening. And I say those words with a little bit of trepidation, not knowing exactly what they might mean to different people, but we can speak a little more about that too as we go along.
How did you create the process?
I guess my whole life I've been on a search. And part of this is because I'm always a harder client than anyone else that I work with. So I have a background, as you know, as an NLP trainer and a writer and developer. And when I work with other people, it seems like things would be always much easier for them than for me. And that could have been an obstacle, but I kind of turned that around and made that the basis for a search for things that would work better. And finding something that goes to a deeper level, works more efficiently, better, faster, simpler. So that's always been what I've been about. And the core transformation work, which I know you're very familiar with, and some of the people listening to this may also know, the core transformation was another work that is in a way an intersection between what we could call spiritual growth and also personal transformation. And that work started me on a path of being more interested in spirituality. I wasn't so much interested before that because I just thought it wasn't possible for me to know it for myself in experience. So I kind of took a hands-off approach. But when I got into the core transformation work and that brought out these spiritual states, I started realizing, okay, this seems to be what spiritual teachers were talking about. What else might they know? And then I started, as a part of that investigation, I came to a specific spiritual teaching. And I don't know that we need to go into it right here in detail. But this specific spiritual teaching, it was considered an advanced teaching because nobody seemed to really get it. People couldn't really use it, and yet the teacher was saying this is the key to enlightenment. So when I examined that teaching and thought about it more from a perspective from my NLP skills, I guess we could say, I had the thought, what if we model this teaching? What if we model what's called enlightenment? What if we model and make specific step by step? Is this even possible? And I went back and forth on that, but basically what came to me fairly quickly when I encountered this teaching, it just came to me how to do it in a way that was specific and precise and that anyone could follow.
So what was it specifically that you found out this is something that you can use for your own practice or that you can use for coaching of other people?
Yes, I'd be happy to begin with the specifics. To get all the detail that you need to really understand and do it well takes a little more time, but I'm happy to start. So the one question inherent in a lot of spiritual practice and a lot of spiritual approach is how do we dissolve the ego? The thought is pretty universal in especially Eastern spiritual traditions that enlightenment or awakening has to do with dissolving the ego or losing the ego and also becoming this sense of vast consciousness, more the vast self rather than a limited, separate sense of self. So I really started, I'll just go over this really quickly, with the question from Ramana Maharshi, who was a sage, a spiritual teacher from India from the last century. And the teaching that he offered his students was to ask, who am I? Who am I? Constantly. And that if they would ask that question, the hope was it could bring them to enlightenment. But as I said earlier, it didn't really work for most people. It was very, very rare that someone actually got something out of that question. And I think it's because the question itself just tends to lead people to conceptual and mental answers. So rather than do that, what I did was begin to explore what if we explore, what is this thing called the ego? Maybe it's the I. And rather than asking, who am I? What if we ask, where is the I located? So it's a different question, and it actually goes for a different thing, a different category of experience even. But what I did was, by asking that question, where's the I located? I did this in my own experience, and right away I got an answer. In my own experience, I went, okay, where's the I located? We constantly say sentences beginning with this word I. I'm sitting here, I'm talking with you, I'm sharing some information, I'm going to pack later for a trip. The word I comes up over and over again. And if we think about it, and if the ego doesn't really have a definition, nobody's given a good definition for that, but if we think about it, perhaps the simplest way of understanding what the ego is it's the I. And we do have a sense of what this I is, although it is unconscious in our experience. But if right now I go, okay, I'm talking to you, and maybe I could say, I am aware, if I notice a body sensation right now, I could say, I am aware of feeling right now in my lower back. Okay, where is the I that's aware of this feeling? And if I take a moment just to tune in and notice the I, okay, I get something kind of here in my head. This is just how it's coming to me now. It comes differently every time I ask the question. Here in my head, it's a little bit soft and not very substantial, but here's the sense of I. And then from there, once we have the location for the I, now we have an experience of the ego. It's not about concept now. It's about an actual experience right at this moment. And now I'm in a position that I can do something. And then the process, the wholeness process, has to do with finding the I first, and then a very gentle and simple way of dissolving, melting the I.
When you say we dissolve the I, with what specifically? How do we do that?
Okay, here, to answer that question, and experience will again take more time than we have, because in the training I lay certain frames for understanding it, so that when people get to the step of dissolving the I, it tends to happen for almost everyone the first time even, and it tends to happen in a significant way. I can give you the answer to that in a quick way, and it won't be as complete or profound, if we could say, as if all those background frames are first laid. But okay, the basic thing, to be able to dissolve and melt the I, we have to understand the alternative. And the I, as we all unconsciously experience it, without realizing it, when we think I this, I that, we tend to be referring to a small place in space. And oftentimes it's even smaller than what I was showing. It might be the size of a pea right here between my eyebrows. It might be something out here that's the size of an orange or an apple. It could be located anywhere. It could be here in my chest. But often for people in Western culture anyway, the I is located somewhere in or around the head. That's the most typical location. Might be in the head, might be around the head. So it's not really possible or useful to dissolve the I until we know the alternative. And because it's very difficult to just say, don't do what you've done if you don't know what else to do. And if unconsciously I'm experiencing who I am as this place in my head, say, or as a little orange that's sized thing, that's little cloud that's out here, it's not going to necessarily be easy or even possible for that to melt without what it's going to melt into, what's going to happen next. So one of the ways I build this up in the training is to explore the alternative, and that is this sense of vast consciousness that the spiritual teachers talk about. This is also something that every baby experiences. When we're born, we can see this. Everyone, I think, has looked into the eyes of a baby, and if you've looked into the eyes of the baby, you can see that there is a sense of just sort of open, spacious presence. It's and the baby, developmental psychologists will tell you, they don't have a sense of an I. That's not meaningful to them. They don't have language. They don't even know the difference between their body and some space around, the mother, things that they see. There's no differentiation. Now, so what I do to this is so fast. I feel a little bit apologetic that it's moving over territory so quickly that really needs to be a little more slow and more metaphors to build it. But basically, we do also have, even right now in our experience, immediately available to us, a sense of this vast consciousness, and it's in this word awareness that it's easy to find it. And lots of people use the word awareness these days. Spiritual practices use that, spiritual teachers. Often it's not defined in experience, and if it is, people might use it slightly different ways. So I share very specifically how I use it, and the way I use it is this, basically. Right now, we can all notice, okay, I'm aware of my body. So there's awareness through the body right now. At any moment in time, there's awareness. We can notice it throughout the body. Then if we check, there's also awareness of space around. It's available to us right now in this moment, in any moment, so that if there was a sound, if somebody snaps a finger on one side of me or the other side, that sound is naturally received. I'm aware of it without any effort to be aware of it. It's just sort of a natural capacity to notice. So there is this sense of awareness that we all have, if we check for it, that's through the body and all around us. And even if our eyes are shut, there's a sense of space all around that we can easily sense, that we can easily notice. And there's really not an edge to it. Who knows how far it goes? It's not that one can find an edge to the sense of awareness. If a sound happened way out there, we would notice it too if it were loud enough. So that's this sense of awareness that there always is in and through our body and beyond us. And that's the kind of consciousness that a baby has when a baby is born. We all had that when we were born, and we still have it. It's just that when we wake up and we go out throughout the day, without realizing it, instead of experiencing ourselves as this vast consciousness, we unconsciously shrink it down to think that I am a small place in space. And that's a really interesting thing, because if I'm unconsciously thinking believing that I'm a small place in space, in my head, outside my head, I'm going to be narrowing my experience of who I am and narrowing my capacity. And that has significant ramifications. So the very first step of the wholeness process is to notice where the I is located for me in this moment, and I just was sharing that's right here. And then to notice the experience of the awareness. It's all around. And then there's this possibility that now is created where what happens if this I, which is, we could think of it as almost like a fist that's made a contraction, if this I is just invited to open, relax, melt, dissolve as the fullness of consciousness, as the awareness that's all around and throughout. And generally, when the setup is done, when the whole process is done in a systematic and simple way, it happens really naturally, that it just required our noticing. So I notice the sensation here of the I. I check, does it welcome the inviting? Does it welcome the invitation to open, relax, melt, dissolve as all of awareness? I can just check that and pause and allow that to happen. And then when I do that right now, what just happens without thinking is it didn't take more than a simple invitation, because just like a contracted fist is happy to relax, once the attention is there and we notice we've been holding this tension, that we weren't aware of. So this sense of the I is an unnecessary tension and stress in our psyche at the unconscious level. Once the attention is there and the gentle invitation is there, generally it naturally just releases itself, dissolves, melts, and relaxes. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I really have to say, since you taught me this process, you coached me with this process, I can say that even if it sounds simple or simplistic or whatever, it is a very profound process, and it can create really deep, deep changes. Connirae, you created an online course about this. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, I surely can, Martin. And just first to add to what you're saying about the deep changes, I appreciate you sharing that, and it's been my own experience as well. This method basically came to me because I needed something more, and I found that for myself, it helped me make some shifts that I wasn't finding any other way of making. And then it goes beyond that to make unexpected and surprising shifts. It's like, oh, this other greater well-being starts coming into place, greater sense of peace, greater sense of ease, more sense of humor about life, more joy, sleeping better. These are the kinds of things that just naturally happen for me and happen for most people who do the work. And the online course is my project to make it available to everyone around the world who wants access. Because when it became clear to me that this was more than just, a fun little game, that it actually has potential for the profound shifting that I think we all do want. We all want this really deep healing, this really greater sense of joy, this greater ease in moving through life, this greater access to our own wisdom, our own creativity, so that we can contribute to our potential. It became clear to me that my capacity to personally guide people is limited. There's only a certain number of people I can personally guide. So I created a systematic course so that everyone can have access. And there are already people from around the world who are starting to enjoy the benefits of it. And what this is, it's a 2-day training that was professionally recorded, professionally edited, and it's very carefully created and lovingly created into an online course, an online sequence, so that you can go through the whole thing and really get the benefits. The handouts are there. There are 4 different wholeness methods. And as you alluded to, Martin, there's much more subtlety and depth in it than one might think based on what I've shared so far. It's both simple, and also the subtlety is where it becomes possible to really have the profound shifts. And it's by understanding the different variations that one can do and one needs to go through to adapt to each unique person. That's where it can actually be simple for everyone. And as I share in the online course, if it's easy, you're most likely on track doing the process. If it starts being work, that's an indication that it's not this process anymore, it's something else. And that actually there's a key. If you learn a little more about the process, there's a key that again makes it really simple so that you can have the results and they feel like less effort to the system rather than more. And you can learn more there. There are more details about the outline for the course, what you get with each segment, and there are some reviews, what people have said, people sharing the results they've gotten from the process, that kind of thing is all there. Thinking back to our conversation that we've just had here, I'm not sure if I really conveyed the sense of the process through that very quick glimpse of finding the I and finding the awareness and allowing the I to dissolve and melt into awareness. That's the best I can do in about 5 minutes. But there's really a lot more to it than that. And there are things like, well, what happens if the I doesn't want to melt and dissolve? Because that does happen a substantial amount of time. And then one needs to know how to deal with that in order to have the whole thing again be effortless, gentle, and kind to the system. Because that's really the key. Through this work, I've come to a greater and greater clarity that the key to real work and to successful and effective and deep work, work that lasts, and that you don't have to try to hold into place or maintain it, it just lasts on its own. The key to that kind of work is it's always gentle. It's always a relaxing of force, a melting away of force, rather than adding any kind of effort, force, or coercion into the system. And there are a lot of change methods that actually have a subtle amount of coercion in them. And it gets clearer and clearer to me as I do this kind of practice for myself, the blessing that it is to have a method that has zero coercion in it. It's all really about discovering the subtle ways we've been trying to coerce ourselves into being somebody that we don't really need to be, and that takes more effort and stress for us to be. And just letting all of that actually melt, dissolve, so that we can experience ourselves in really a more simple way and a more profound and ordinary way at the same time.
Connirae, many thanks for this very nice interview.
Thank you so much, Martin. I really appreciate the chance to share this with you, and through you, the people that are part of your community. Yeah. And I hope everyone who chooses to find something really useful in it.